Fantastic. Okay, so yeah, good evening and welcome to all of you. I am Sharan Agarwal, the Students and Recent Graduates Coordinator at the Alumni Association at the LSE Alumni Association of Mumbai and Western India. Today, I am joined by Lead Angels and by LSE Generate, and we have the pleasure of welcoming you to our first event of the Entrepreneurship Month, which is called Finding and Funding Unicorns of Tomorrow. Please do make a note that this is, as I said, just the first event. And so we will be having plenty more to keep your eyes open for them and register for them. We already have one lined up on the 17th, which is a branding event for startups, and one which is a pitching competition on the 31st called Pitch It. The links for these are in the chat. So today's agenda, it is going to include angel investing's nuts and bolts. And then we will continue by speaking about HelloVerify. We will have an elevator pitch and we will do a persistent evaluation of the same. The founder of HelloVerify is here with us today. His name is Karan Mirchandani. He's the co-founder. And interestingly, he studied the general course and graduated in 2007 from LSE as well. Finally, we will end the talk today with the nuances of the SaaS sector for the early stage investments. I would like to now hand this over to Abhishek Pillai, who is the LSE Generate Ambassador for India. He is from the batch of 2018. He studied an MSc in Economics and Management. And I'd like to request him to say a few words about what LSE Generate is and what they do. Over to you, Abhishek.
Hi, thank you, Sharan. Welcome everyone. Hope everyone's safe and doing well. So a brief about myself. So as Sharan said, I'm basically the Mumbai LSE Generate International Chapter Ambassador in Mumbai. And also I run, as you can see from my background, I run a solar SaaS company called Solar Ladder. That's basically for solar EPC players. Now about the LSE Generate program, the LSE Generate program's main aim is to actually help LSE students and alumni create socially responsible businesses, both in UK and worldwide. So throughout the entire year, the Generate program arranges funding competitions. So there are 2 funding competitions in each term, wherein students or alumni can win up to £30,000 to start their venture. There are events, training sessions from other experienced entrepreneurs. There's an accelerator program that's arranged by the LSE Generate team, networking sessions, and a very good co-working space that's completely free for any LSE student or alumni to basically start. And interestingly, there's also a new co-working space coming up in Nigeria, and hopefully very soon in India too. So, so while most of these events are for the students at LSE campus, Generate recognizes that we have to help the alumni once they graduate to start their own business. So that's why they have basically started the international chapters. So there are these chapters in India, in Mumbai, there's one in China, Israel, in Tel Aviv, then in Dubai, Brazil, and San Francisco. So the main aim of these international chapters is to basically create a community. So any student or any alumni who wants to basically start a business can get that head start and get the support from these people. So these international chapters, the main aim is to have events organized in the local chapters, have data and digipacks to help them get started with their funding or get connected to investors. And as the chapter progresses, hopefully have co-working spaces and accelerator programs. Now, while all the main aim is to help alumni and students start their business, everything is in line with the UN's United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. so that all the businesses that is created at any stage is also socially responsible. So that's a brief about LC Generate. If anyone in India wants to know more about how LC Generate can help, you need to reach more audience with funding competition. Please reach out to me and or Sharon, and then we can basically help you start your entrepreneurship. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for that, Abhishek. And it would be great if you could just drop your email in the chat so people can, reach out to you, and maybe your LinkedIn as well. So yeah, I'd like to move ahead now and talk about one of the pillars of early stage investing in India that we have with us today, a person with more than 2 decades of early stage investing. And he was the first external CEO of IIT Bombay's incubator, Sign, and is an integral part of the startup ecosystem. So I would now like to request my dear friend Sushanto Mitra, who's the founder and CEO of Lead Angels, to help us understand the nuts and bolts of angel investing. So over to you, Sushanto. Do give us your angel investing masterclass, please.
Thanks, Sharan. And so guys, I'll just, I spent many years, as you can see, in consulting and in financial services. And then as I was perhaps early to see the tide turning in 2000, when I saw that, startups were becoming more the sort of happening place in the Indian economy. And I moved over and I got an opportunity to work for IIT Bombay and so on. But I think the seeds of the startup sort of generation, if I may say so, started in the year 2000. It was called the dot-com boom. And 20 years hence, the results are very all out there in the open. If you look at the top 5 most valuable companies in the world, these are, the Apple and the Facebook and Microsoft and Google and so on. They were all startups that were not even in existence 20 years ago. And all the other companies that were there, the automobile companies and the banks are not there anymore in the top 5 market capitalization. Nearer home, if you see the valuation of Reliance today, what they have done in the last 5-7 years in terms of their telecom business and their internet is actually more valuable than the rest of their legacy business, right? So that's the other thing. And last but not the least, if you read recently in the newspapers that PharmEasy acquired one of India's largest diagnostic chains called Thyrocare, is proof that startups are taking over the world. And if one is not looking at startup investing, perhaps you're missing out on something. And that's the first thing. It's no longer a luxury or a sort of pastime to invest in startups. You need to invest in startups to protect your portfolio, really. And the interesting part is that when you start looking at a startup, it doesn't really look like a big company because it's only a temporary phase when it will eventually grow into, of course, not all of them grow to that space. And that's where you have, organizations which support that. But I'll come to that later on. But in essence, when we talk about startups, that's only a very temporary phase in the life of a company. And when it gets over, it becomes a huge tree. And you can see them, and they are now giants. And this is exactly how the Western world looks at investing startups. They invest, and these are the reasons why these are very valuable companies right now, if some of you own or trade in these shares. India is a little bit of a different story because, whichever city you live in, you have traffic jams, you have potholes. I always think Bombay has more of them, but every time I go to Bangalore or to Delhi and I see a few potholes, I feel comforted that even other cities have potholes. But having said that, there are a lot of things yet to be done in India. And whether you can see the way Paytm solved the demonetization problem, or how the e-commerce companies solve the lockdown problem. Education is something which is really transforming our entire lives. Kids are no longer going to school, and they've been at home for a while, and yet life goes on. We never thought of education without schools and colleges. That's what we are coming to now. And the nice thing about it is that in India, that it's not just that Amazon has 80% of the market and the others. There could be 4 or 5 companies in this space, and you could benefit from investing in any one of those, and you'd be fine, right? So, India is of course the third largest startup ecosystem. Unicorns are being born almost, 4 a month, sort of thing. And in every sector, and there's no one sector whether, in every sector, and I was talking about PharmEasy. PharmEasy has become a unicorn this year, and there'll be many more to come, almost 3 times as much as we have them today. So that's really the future of Indian startups. And why are people investing in startups? Is basically because we are able to catch on those big companies very early on in their lives, and therefore returns from those companies are not in 15% CAGR or 100% IRR. These are companies where you get crazy returns like 2,000%, 3,000%, and even if a few of them don't really do all that well, you get pretty good returns. So it's, as I was saying, it's no longer a pastime or a hobby. Startup investing is now mainstream, and of course, apart from that, especially for people who are professionals or running their own businesses, a lot of things that you can learn from these startups because they're applying technology to their businesses very aggressively. And if we could take a few things behind with them, that would help us. India has a lot of problems, and I said, whichever political stream you may like, but probably nobody will deny that the startups have really solved a lot of problems that governments and so on are not able to solve. And by investing into these startups, you're actually solving India's problems, as well as, some of you could also help these startups in their path and in a way give back to what you can. And all of us want to invest in startups, but who does the dirty work, right? Where do you find startups that you can invest in them? How do you evaluate? Every business plan looks the same. How do you do all the paperwork? And in India, unlike the West, paperwork is quite cumbersome. And it takes, typically it takes, a month or so just to get through the paperwork of investing in startups, and you need somebody to do that. And I think the most critical thing in startup is you have to understand, in the biological world, getting eaten up is not a great thing. But in the startup world, if you don't get eaten up at the right time, then you may not survive. So finding M&A partners for those startups is a critical function of post-investment monitoring. And if you don't do that, then you'll probably leave a lot of capital to waste. And this is where angel networks come in and help you to go through that entire 9 yards before you can invest in a company. And the advantage of the network, of course, is that you have a community of people to help you to evaluate the company. So it's not just one person who takes that decision or evaluates the company. There is a whole group of people from different backgrounds and so on, and to help you to make that final decision. Of course, the final decision is yours. So it's not like a fund where you give your money and somebody else decides where that money goes in. Each time an investment opportunity comes, it's you who decides where this money is going to go. Just a little bit about lead angels. Started by 3 of us from IIT Bombay. After I realized that there was a need for an angel network around the academic institutions, and we have now about 45 investments. But more importantly, we realized very early that finding an agency to raise the next round of capital or to do an M&A, startups find it very difficult to do that. And that's why we have an advisory arm which advises our portfolio companies for their next steps, as well as the legal and accounting stuff, which again, in India is a big pain. So in essence, we make life easier both for the investor and the startup to move in the direction of startup investing. And for those of you who don't know more about lead angels, it's every month 3 companies or more get presented. People deep dive into a company and then come up with their investment decisions. Once that person decides, once a individual who knows about that business better than others decides to invest, the others can decide to invest or not. And then, of course, legal diligence and stuff like that. And most important, of course, is the post-investment monitoring, where our 2 arms, lead advisory and LAMPs, actually help the startup and the investors to find the next exit and the next stage for the startup. As I said, finding startups is not an easy task, and our team goes through a lot of companies to invest in 45 in the last 6 years. And of course, while the velocity may have increased, but yes, the evaluation and the reviews are what we do for a living every day. That's our 9-to-5 job. Just one aside, just like a lot of you may have invested in one startup and that or 2 startups, but just like the stock market portfolio or any portfolio, you need to be diversified, because some sectors may do well at given points of time, some may not do so well. So like post-COVID, there was a bunch of startups which were in trouble, a bunch did very well. It's best to have a sort of portfolio approach to investing. These are some of our startups that we've co-founder of HelloVerify is here. Again, grown phenomenally since we invested in them, and others being Super Daily, which got acquired by Swiggy, Shop Kirana, which is now is valued at about 50 times our original valuation. And there are, of course, many others which are following in their footsteps. Just a little bit about the team. Dhruv was a professor at MBI, and he and I actually wrote this book called Funding Your Startup. And actually that's helped Lead Angels to get a lot of young entrepreneurs apply to us for funding. So that's become very useful for our deal flow or funnel, as we say. Venkat is partner of India's first overseas impact fund, which is called Avishkar Frontier Fund, and invests in Southeast Asia and so on. Of course, me, I was the first CEO of one of the first incubators in India, which is Sign IIT Bombay. I was also the first employee #1 of Hyderabad Angels. And as Sharan said, over 20 years in the startup ecosystem. Of course, the younger people, so we are like a mix of gray hairs and very young people. And I think that's the way to go, especially if you understand the complexity of Indian law and financial system. We need to have that, as well as young and bright people with different backgrounds to evaluate and support these companies once these are invested. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. And of course, I can leave my email ID behind. And we'll probably take questions at the end of the session rather than a break, given the need of. Thank you very much, Sharan.
Thanks for that, Sushant. I always learn something new about angel investing when you talk, in spite of being an angel investor now for the last 5 years. And there's always something new to learn. So thanks for that. So now we're going to move on to the next session, next point, not next topic in our agenda, which is our fireside chat with Karan Mirchandani, co-founder of HelloVerify, and Manish Johari, the Senior Vice President of Lead Angels. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Sharan. I hope I'm audible enough. Just 2 days back, I think the glass ceiling was broken when you had a company called Articulate Global, which raised a Series A round of $1.5 billion. So apt to the topic of today, finding and funding unicorns of tomorrow. Here is one that leads us, that first round itself, it is valued at $3.75 billion and rakes in $1.5 billion. So we are in those times. How quickly can company move to that status? That is anyone's guess. And basically the persistence of the entrepreneur. Is he persistent enough? And so the book that Sushanto was talking about, that in that book, Sushanto along with Dhruv have actually come up with a framework called persistent. As we all know, entrepreneurs have to be really, really focused, really, they really persevere across whatever they want to, whatever they have vision, whatever they have dreamed, and set it out from the teams. So similar is the case with Karan, who hails from a business family. He did his schooling from St. Columbus after quite a few years from Sushanto from Delhi. And after having done a schooling, he went on to Tufts University, which was a dual institute program, wherein he'd also gone to LSE, which is, of course, the Alumni Association is the host for today's program. And then he did his MBA from Emory University. So Karan, before we move on, so you've been from a business family, you came back and started your family business. A few words from you, what made you start out on your own?
Well, I think, firstly, thank you to LSE. Thanks, Manish. Thanks, Sushanto, for having me here. I think, when I came back, the first instinct always is to join the family business in India. That was it. That was family investments. So that was a traditional way of doing business. Always wanted to do something of my own. And that's where me and my brother sort of got together, started thinking, what we wanted was very important. And that's why we sort of, dived into exploring this side of the business.
I mean, we are also talking about the SaaS industry, and in some ways, background verification market is expected to rise to $9.9 billion market. Did you know when you started out that it would actually be such a big market where you'll be taking a pie of it when you started?
No, we didn't know it's going to be that large of a market. But we did know that, data will play an important role. Obviously, me and my brother had been in the US where everyone gets background checked. And we realized that in India, no one was getting background checked. And it would play a large role, whether it was in loans, whether it was in hiring purposes.
I think your signal is coming a little weak.
That time, no, we didn't know, but we knew that the problem is going to become large as time goes on.
Okay. So if you were to give an elevator pitch of yours,
right,
to the LSE crowd, what would
right.
it be? Can we hear a minute spiel on what HelloVerify stands for and what is building?
Okay, sure. So I've probably done this about 50 to 100 times, because that's the amount of investors and discussions you have with people. So I'll get started. Hi, we're HelloVerify. We run API-driven automated background checks in India. This was founded by Varun and me. We're brothers. When we started, we bootstrapped the business and grew this to over $3 million in annual revenue. Post that in 2018, we were fortunate enough to get into Y Combinator's winter batch. And that led to our seed round of $2 million, where lead angels, venture souk, a lot of Silicon Valley funds participated. The problem with background checks in India is that clients want fast onboarding times. And the issue that's at large is that the traditional industry or the traditional players extremely at times. And the process is tedious. HelloVerify today works with over 80 of India's large businesses, so across different industries, different sectors. The reason why everyone's using us is because we're extremely accurate, fast, and fully automated. We connect the applicant with the HR and the data stream. We've been growing 100% year on year, and we're profitable, and we expect to keep this momentum going forward. As a growth opportunity, we've always been white collar focused, and with India's burgeoning gig economy, handyman services, drivers, we expect to enter into that segment for the next set of our growth. Thank you very much.
Okay. So now I'll just put that screen. So you come up with the what you shared with us was why you started, which actually takes care of your the problem statement.
Right.
Now, if you go in this, just one moment. Right. Okay. So we evaluate most startups on this persistent framework, as we had been discussing, as we have discussed with you also earlier. So the first thing in this is P for problem. So the problem you're solving is that in India, data was not available, not a singular source. You have automated those through the APIs that you've created, another thing, right?
Yes.
In terms of earnings model, have you made it more? Have you been able to make it cheaper for people to do background verification check? What exactly is the earning earning model? Is it per company? Is it per person? How is it?
Sure. So we charge per person that people hire. So every new employee that you get, or for a recurring employee, if you want to do a background check again, for example, their criminal history 1 year ago and their criminal history today will be different. So it's
Right.
pay per use. That's one. So it's the earning model currently.
Okay. Risks we'll come to later. So the size of the market globally is supposed to be nearly $10 billion, expected to be in 2020. As of now, it's expected to be around $0.9 billion. Most of that growth, where do you think it will be coming from? Do you think India could be the place? Where
I think Asia. I think the Asia Pacific region, and obviously India will be a dominant factor there, especially with affordability of 4G and 5G coming in, so that a lot of people get their data online. The penetration of Aadhaar, the fact that a lot of private databases are now online. So all of that. So it's a combination of your data becoming digital, less paperwork, in compliances, government work. So there's a lot of data availability at all levels.
So you're integrating all of those, and that is your innovation, right? To get all those things together, and you can have with a one shot, you can get all these things for the company HR department. Is that
So one is how we plug into those data sources, but the second is what we do with that data, the rules we have, etc. The fraud rules. So maybe I have 20 fraud rules, but another competitor only has 5. So he'll give green on 15 of the background checks, but I'll be able to find those 15 reds. So that's the secret, I would say, that we are working towards. In India, you have issues like your last name comes with your first name. If you ask the person your first name, he'll always put his last name. Then you ask him his last name, he'll put his first name there, right? So those are things that your data has to sort of, be able to manage. So we've built proprietary rules that sort of help us to match better.
Okay. So scalability is not an issue that we've already seen. There's a huge burgeoning job market. How large is your team now, and what was it when you started?
Well, when we started, it was about 15 people. Today we're about 300 plus. And what we're doing is we're constantly automating. So the amount of work that we were doing last year with 300 people, this year is almost, our capacity has risen almost 3x or 4x because of the automation level. But yes, the complexity level also is increased because, in court records, people won't enter your name as Manish Johari. They might just enter as Manish J.
Manish J, exactly.
Or it could become Manish Johari, right? It's possible. So those are the things that do happen at the government level. Now, how do I find that? That's where our matching technology sort of says, okay, with a likelihood of 75%, this is the same person. Then it sort of goes in and says, okay, maybe your father's name is on the thing, or your driving license, or there's a unique identifier sometimes. Sometimes there's no unique identifier.
Sure.
Addresses aren't standard. Some places will write B44. Some person will write block B44. So those are the things that your engine sort of has. They sound very simple, but your engine has to sort of, manage that complexity level in India.
So that is what the entry barrier that you're creating, because you have that huge data set of people. How many people would you have done so far? I'm like, if we say, look at how many people.
Oh, we have probably conducted. So let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say last month, we ran over 3 lakh checks or 4 lakh checks.
Okay.
Depending
so last
on
month that. So if you extrapolate that, I think you would have done more than 10 million for sure in the history of this thing, right?
Yeah, probably crossed. I mean, safely to say we've probably done over 5 million background checks. Yeah.
Okay.
Easily. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of experience there. Yeah.
Did you start out from a niche, or like when you started, it was a broad market that you were targeting, or you just thought that this is the thing that I'll run? Because normally startup, they focus, right? They don't want to go to Reliance and then ITC and then say go to Taj and also go to Patanjali or say Ghadi Detergent when they are say, small companies?
Yeah. So we had two niches. One, large companies would not let us in. So we had to start with small companies. We focused on the IT sector because there was very high compliance in the IT sector. So we chose the IT sector and we chose small companies. Once we got a bunch of small companies together, we sort of used the number game to a mid-sized company saying, hey, we work with 20 companies. So they gave us an entry. Once we got into the medium-sized companies, we were able to name drop the medium-sized.
Okay.
When you tell a large company, hey, I work with these guys who are your tier 2 competitors, and I work with 35 companies, you sort of build credibility. And again, there's no point going to a large entity because you won't be able to service them. Your systems haven't reached that level of maturity. So you might gain the account, but you lose it also very fast.
And the fleece you on the costing also. And the
oh, absolutely. You won't even get an entry again. So, it's a step-by-step approach.
Right. I've actually heard of horror stories wherein a whole lot of these AI startups, for nearly a year, they're just doing POCs only. That let's have a little bit of tweak to this, Can you get us this also? And they've not paid a single say dollar of say revenue.
Yeah.
So I think that was an interesting strategy of yours. So to name it, what would be the traction levels now, and what are you aiming for? I mean,
so in terms of the traction, I think we're one of the few companies where we try to be profitable. We've always focused on that. So we're trying to mix growth with profit. Hopefully for the next couple of years, we want to grow 100% year on year. So that's where we want to go and have a multi-million-dollar turnover, let's say in 5 years from today. We're already at a few million. So try to grow about 100% year on year. I think when Sushanto and all invested, we were about 3 million. We've definitely grown from there 100%. And then we'll see how we take that forward.
So super. So for all, that was the persistent model that we had. Now, talking about the SaaS sector, I would like to hear from you, say, Karan. I mean, in some ways, you are very closely there, like quite similar to SaaS, and like India is churning out unicorns by the droves in the SaaS sector. More than 20% of them are from the SaaS sector, starting from the Freshdesk and Zohos. So what's your feel? What is the advantage that we have, and what is happening around the SaaSification of the startup unicorn space?
Got it. So I'll just give you a brief background about the whole sector, right? So if you take the 1980s and the early 2000s, right, that was a period of enterprise software. We all bought Windows. Everyone bought hardware. Infrastructure services had to be given. And you needed large companies, Infosys, Accenture, to sort of run those backend systems. And then came the whole shift towards saying, hey, this is really expensive, putting money up front. So in a way, I would compare SaaS to the whole EMI culture or rent-free culture. And it said, okay, you know what? You can have all of these that you need as rent. And that is, it becomes cheap today for any new startup. The startup costs have significant to try to do the same thing 20 years ago. And I think, what's there to grow? I look at my own company. Why we use Freshdesk as a product, which is a unicorn. Why do we use it? I can't build my own customer service software. B, I need to focus on building my background screening product that I am good at. That is hard enough itself. Let me not lose focus. Third is I don't want to create an infrastructure for my customer service. Third, I don't want to deal with security issues. Fourth, $5 billion. So let me pay in piecemeal. So I think it sort of gives you the flexibility in terms of your finances, your security, scaling. Let someone else who's really good at that do that. So I believe the best of the startups focus on what they're doing and they sort of outsource everything else. So it becomes a sort of I help you, you help me sort of game, which is exponentially scalable. Today, I might use Freshdesk as a company for my customer service. Maybe Freshdesk will use me for his background checks of his employees. That's a separate product.
Oh, yes.
So it's almost,
True. So $3.5 billion
I
in
believe,
2020.
yeah.
$3.5 billion in 2020. That was the SaaS revenue size of the Indian software as a service driven companies. This is expected to rise to $25 billion. And a lot of it would be the Freshdesk, Zoho's, Innovacor, your Beanstalk browser, these kind of companies. They are getting the global developed world to use the products that have been created in the Indore, Bhopal, say Kolkata or Pune and Jaipurs of the world.
Right.
What's your view on this? And how many more do you think? We are already at 12. Do you think we will maintain to have 20+% of SaaS unicorns within the unicorn space? What's your view on that?
I just think in general, I think India for the next 20 years is going to be on a massive growth trajectory, whether it's traditional companies or new startups. I think we'll have over 100 unicorns in the next 5 years. Compared to we had one back in 2012 or 2011. So yeah, I think it's just going to grow. And I do think that SaaS companies in India have better than their Silicon Valley counterparts and built for the world. And that's something which has been shown very well by Freshdesk and Zoho, Indian built companies competing at a global level. So they have a price advantage, they have people advantages, they can put more engineers, and it can be built at perhaps a slightly cheaper funding than a similar company in the West.
True. And one thing, Karan, you very rightly said, there's a mindset change. Okay, because in the earlier days, so I remember, like I had a couple of friends who were selling software. If they would go to a company, say a manufacturing unit, sir, we have this ERP, would you like to try it out? So they used to say, what you are selling software to us, we will get 5 people to sit at our place and they will create our ERP software.
Right.
So there was a lot of build versus buy hangover at that time. Now that is flipped now. And people are saying, boss, I would rather buy and focus on my core areas. As you said, focus is important. And a lot of people are getting that and not wanting to encroach on anyone else's category. Of course, we have some of the larger companies like Jio, which is trying to be in each and every pie, whether it's pharma, healthcare, software as a service, or even a Zoom clone kind of thing. So they've got it all that you can think of in the starter space. And of course, your haptic, which is, eating up all the acqui-hires in the AI space, so to say.
Right.
So I think more or less we are done from our side. Shall we take some questions from the audience on this?
Sure.
Okay. So one question directly for you from Dilip. Are you also doing domestic health verification?
Well, that's a great question. Yes, we're doing that. And we're launching a product very soon where we'll hopefully help you hire the domestic help who's already background checked. Or if you have an existing help or a new help that you find on your own, we'll help you verify that as well. So we're going to get into the consumer segment as well very soon.
Oh, okay. So it's a good time to enter your thing right now. You're moving from B2B to B2C. That's a
we're working on it.
Okay. All the best for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to take up a question?
If there's nothing in the chat, I think there are a couple of questions that we received before we started the event. I reckon you've covered a couple of them, but I'm going to ask them anyways. Can you share a bit more about your growth metrics with us, and how do you intend to continue with this growth momentum?
So I think in terms of metrics, I think every company looks at about 5 or 6 key metrics, and that's something that even investors would look at, depending on the type of company you are. In our case, my metric, the one metric which is my North Star, is how many background checks did I conduct in a month. If that number is growing, that means I'm good. Second is the unit economics. Okay, that number is growing great. Am I profitable? Am I making money? Third is, okay, what is that growth rate? If I'm growing 1% every month, my investor is now going to be very happy. And the good talent that I've acquired in my company is also going to leave at some point. I think those are the 3 key metrics. For certain companies, it's also your daily, active users or monthly active users. And fourth, customers. So I think because it's a lot to do with quantitative, and it allows founders like us not to love our product. I will love my product once these numbers are working. This prevents bias from kicking in.
Okay.
And I think the last key aspect to maintain these 4 is a talented team. You have to build talent. Sometimes you have to lead from the front. And I think somewhere down the line, one of these metrics is not going to work at some point. The thing to constantly do in any business is to keep talking to your customers. Sometimes it's really as simple as just saying, hey, what's your problem? They will tell you the issue and go and fix it. It's literally that simple, but people don't do it. If you're launching a retail brand in stores, go and talk to the customer who is repeatedly going to the retail store and buying your product.
Sure.
Talk to 500 of them, you'll find your issue.
Got it.
Right. So what in your opinion is a sustainable growth rate for HelloVerify?
Well, it depends. The market is growing. 100% is something that we are targeting. Maybe even try to take it to 200%. And what will happen is that as the market opens up, it gives me more capital. See, for us as a company, we're growing a lot on our own internal capital. Okay, we haven't diluted very much of our stake. And because we have our own earnings, so we're sort of running it, I would say, in between a VC and a business sort of model, where we're saying, hey, let's make money along the way, and we're going to pump that money back into our own growth.
Right.
So yeah, I think 150% is something that we are targeting. If we can grow higher than that, that would be awesome. But yeah, that's something we're targeting. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there are some startups and some entrepreneurs also in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would like to know what is that one thing that you wish you knew before pitching to investors for funding? Before you raised your fund, I'm like, is there something that you feel, what is that one thing which you feel you should have done rightly or known before you pitched to the investors? Or if you did it right, what was it?
Okay, so
yeah,
got it. I think the one thing that all investors look at is product market fit, and that pretty much shows up in your 4 metrics. So we always would look at revenue. We would look at 1, 2 of the metrics. I think you need to look at all 4 of those metrics in a cohesive manner, because that's what tells any investor, hey, this product is working. It could be anything. Investors invest in 500 different businesses. I don't think they even know what businesses they've invested in sometimes. But as long as these 4, and with all due respect to all the investors, the idea is if these metrics are, I think that means they're making money. That's where, like, rightly 3,000 returns. So I think that those 4 metrics are something that you need to know from day one.
So I wanted to ask you that how was Lead Angels different than any other firms that you went to when you were raising funds? And why did you choose Lead Angels over any other network?
So I think, we were very selective in terms of the investor that we wanted to work to. With obviously Sushanto and Lead Angels, we found the right any questions they asked us. So I think it's important for both parties to sort of qualify for each other. And we've seen with Lead Angels, they've obviously done a lot of intros for us as well. So they've done their bit as well. They've guided us in certain ways. So that's been very helpful. And I think, a lot of other maybe funds that maybe I've not worked with, but, they will promise certain things, but then, then those, it's a journey, with both, they've been alongside, we still keep in touch. So yeah, I think that's very important. Yeah, so I think it was a right fit for us from that manner.
Right. And in terms of sustainable development goals, in the SaaS sector and and specifically with HelloVerify, are you all able to target any SDGs?
Can you define SDGs, please?
I think Abhishek would be able to do a better job at this.
Right.
Abhishek, are you there? I mean, sustainable development goals, but like they target specific. The UN has identified certain goals like unemployment, poverty, environmental issues. There's a whole bunch of
Right.
17 UN SDGs, and I don't know the list off the top of my head,
Okay.
but
Right.
there are these kind of, and I was just wondering
Okay.
that does this sector and does the business in particular target these in some kind of essentially a positive externality?
So the key thing that they're looking at is, of course, enhancing the employability index through the right kind of screening and all that.
Right.
Many people, because of fear of that, oh, I don't know this person, why should I recruit?
Right.
While these guys can help allay that fear.
Right.
The service that we're trying to come up with in terms of hiring and connecting people, I'm sure there's a driver out there who's looking for a job, just outside your building. And you are here sitting on Zoom saying, how do I find that driver? The point is there is Tinder to match couples or Bumble to match people, but there's nothing to match you with a driver. So that's a problem that we are trying to also tackle, saying, hey, socially responsible, saying, okay, let's find the guy a job, so, creating employment from that faction, because there's no Naukri structure for them. Yeah, there are a couple of apps out there, but we're working on a different twist to the whole model.
Fantastic.
Right.
So that's it from my end in terms of questions. I don't know, Manish, Sushanto, do you all have anything left that you all would want to ask, or anyone?
I think we are good to go.
Anybody in the audience?
Yeah, anyone in the audience? I think Dilip has a question. How about verifying employer background? Yeah, how about verifying the employer background?
Employer background.
So I do want to clarify. Are they referring to employees or the companies?
The companies, I think.
Okay, so that's a different segment altogether, and I think we'll have to go.
So Karan, what I think Dilip could be targeting at is, now today there are so many startups. Is there a need for a service like where those employers can be verified? Are they fine? Do they have the right kind of funding? Do they have right runway and stuff like that? Is there a need for that? Are you looking at such kind of services for employees to join in the company or that?
No, currently we're just focusing on employees because that's a large market for us. We're not looking at company to company verification. So that's something that's, in the space of companies like Crisil, Moody's, ICRA, CARE, they sort of do that space, which is more like a company that you want to partner with. You want to find out whether he's going to pay you back, his collections, etc. So I think that's a space that we are not entering into. We're focusing on individuals currently.
Okay.
All right.
We are good to go. Sushanto, over to you.
I have no questions. Lovely having you, Karan, here, and thank you for coming. And thank you, LSE Alumni, for hosting us.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you, Lead Angels, and of course, HelloVerify, Karan. It was a pleasure to have you on the call. And
Thank you, everyone.
Hear from you, Manish. Thank you for leading this fireside chat, and Sushanto for your words of wisdom with regards to your angel investing workshop. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to many more such events in the future as well, with Lead Angels and LSE Generate. And and thank you everybody for attending. That's for taking out
So the
time.
forms are there. Forms are there on the chat. Your feedback. So Sharon, for your feedback,
Fantastic.
people could just do that.
Yeah.
If you could just take out half a minute and just fill that feedback form.
Yes, please.
That'll be great for Sharon and us also to evaluate if we can make it better for you.
Yeah, and whether you're looking for funds or wanting to invest, either ways, do leave that link behind. We'll be happy to get it.
And as you can see, even Sonia has again pasted the link for the link tree for all the other events that we're having this month, as it is our entrepreneurship month that mentioned at the beginning as well. Sonia, in fact, herself is going to be hosting one branding event on the 17th of July, and on the 31st, we are having a pitching competition called Pitch It. So please do register for the events. We will be trying to host some more as well. If possible, we'll try to squeeze some more in. So keep your eyes open. And yeah, thank you once again. Do fill in the feedback forms as well, please. And thanks again for attending. It was a pleasure hosting you.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, everyone.
Have a
And we
fantastic
finished
weekend.
bang on time.
Yes, 7 p.m.
Exactly on time, 7:01.
Yeah.
So great. Thank you, everyone, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Good to have you.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone.